Hi everyone, Lukas from Gisbertphotography.com, and in this video, well, I'm just gonna let you know what happened to me in the last 3 months, which is taking 20,000 pictures with the Fuji x-t1, but also doing a full switch from Nikon to Fuji. Now, if you would have seen my review of the Fuji x-t1, which I've done after taking a few thousand shots, 2,000 or 3,000, you know, it was really positive, but I still had some doubt on doing a full switch from Nikon to Fuji. I've now taken close to 20,000 in the last 3 months, so it's a lot of pictures. So really took this camera through, you know, heavy workload, weddings, photo shoot on nearly on a daily basis, and obviously this also include editing all the pictures afterwards, using, you know, having a workflow with those files, which are the RAW files, and you know, it's just been fantastic. It really has been. I've now got a good collection of lenses. I've got a 56, the 35, the 23, and the 10 to 24. For flash system, I use the Godox system, which are the AD360, but also the V850 Ving. Those flashes work perfectly with this camera in manual mode. And because I have not actually used a flash on the camera, I've only used off-camera flash. In the last wedding I had my Nikon on the side, so I used that with the flash when I needed on the dance floor or the reception when it was required. Now, at the moment, the problem with Fuji and what they offer is that the flash capability is not fantastic. If you work in TTL, this may be an issue. I've not heard some great things about the actual flash from Fuji. I've not personally tested, so I can't really comment on it, but I know that the TTL doesn't work great. Using Godox system is amazing in manual, but forget about any TTL or automatic mode. Now, I'm not going to do a review on this camera because I've already done it, and I think that there's been so many people doing reviews and everything's been positive. So it is a great camera. I mean, there is a few negatives which I like to see in the future updates. I know there is a firmware coming out in December which can resolve the issue of the, not the issue, but it's going to increase the shutter speed by having an electronic shutter speed. So you're not limited to 4,000. And I know in some bright days I actually need to use a neutral density filter to be able to cope with the bright days. The other thing is the video capability. Well, I actually have a video coming out with the kind of highlighting what the video can do and can't do. Now you can't use any manual settings, but this again is coming out in December, so I may actually wait for December to bring up that review. Apart from this, little really minor things, which are the battery level. You kind of just know until the last 50 shots that the battery is gonna die. It only has 3 little, the battery is divided in 3 square, and it doesn't seem to drop to 0 until the really end. So it kind of stays to 3 until the battery is dying, and then it goes down to 1 and then 0, but very, very quickly. So you really know how many shots you've got left to take with a full battery. As for example with Nikon or maybe Canon, you can have a good 5 square, I believe, battery, so you can see, you know, every time. So when you have 2 left, you know about how much you've got left to do. That is one of the little issues which I found. Focusing, I think this camera is incredible in single focusing, and I've been really surprised. I do a lot of pictures of children walking towards me or even running towards me. At weddings, you've got a bride in a church walking towards you with the father. So you've got lots of situations where continuous focus is required. However, I find a continuous focus a little unreliable, and it's kind of a 50-50, well, you're going to get it or you're not going to get it. However, I managed to, and I found this even easier, is to keep the camera in single focus. And the focus is so quick that by the time you take the focus, you focus on a person and you take the shot, it's sharp because it's so quick to focus and take the picture. And Even, I wouldn't say at children running, but walking in high pace, I managed to get pretty much all my pictures tack sharp, and that's using the 56mm at 1.2. So, you know, your depth of field is really, really small, so you've got little room for error. But, you know, I managed to get it, and the single focus is really, really one of the best I've used. At weddings, actually on the dance floor, when I compare my shot taken with the Nikon and the Fuji, I could actually see that the Fuji was performing better, and I have more trouble with the focus system on the Nikon, and that's a D3S. It's not, you know, a small amateur camera. So I think that Fuji's done an amazing job. I mean, I have really, really little bad thing to say about this camera. I think it's having the tilt screen really helps to kind of change your perspective. I take so many shots like this. I'm able, when I want to go higher, to actually keep my eyes on it, and it really opens different doors. And I know the Nikon D750 just came out with that tilty screen, and I think a lot of people kind of don't realize how great this can be for photography. I know lots of people highlight the videography advantage. It's true, because you kind of follow it, but if you think about it, all the old medium format, you actually were looking down, you weren't looking there, and there is a reason for that. But I find the different perspective you're able to get, you know, by actually looking at your work, you know, instead of guessing, am I going to get it on focus? Is it right or is it wrong? I've done this many times with the Nikon, and most of the time you get used to it. But with this, it's kind of more accurate. Now, the other thing is, working this camera in manual is probably the best experience I've ever had with a camera. When you work with Nikon or Canon, you kind of get your exposure. You learn to guess your exposure. So, for example, you get to a place and you think, okay, this is probably ISO 1600 at that speed, that aperture. And most of the time you kind of get around that, you know, with experience. But with this, you kind of do the same. But you look in the EVF and it tells you exactly what the exposure is like before you take in the shot. So you can actually be much quicker with this than you can be with a DSLR. And I know in some situations, especially at weddings where, well, time is crucial in some situations where you can't miss a moment. You know, I work in aperture priority in very little time during the wedding just to avoid missing that shot. With this, it's different. You keep the camera to your eye and you just adjust. You know, if it's too bright, you switch that aperture ring to 5.6 or to, you know, higher to get a little darker shot, and this will straight away compensate, and you'll be able to see this in the EVF. And this is really one of the biggest features for me, is to be able to have this easy exposure work. Now, obviously, the lenses are some of the best lenses I've used. I mean, the construction of the lens is simply the best I've used. When you touch this lens, you know, they're very, very made. They're superbly made. You know, there's all metal, and it just really feels like they've put a lot of time and effect to put this lens together. I'm not saying the Nikon and Canon doesn't, but I'm just saying that this feels more like, you know, I don't know. To me, it's another level, really. In regard to the optic inside, is again, you know, you get really consistent colors, consistent contrast between all the lenses, and sometimes you can even kind of struggle to find out which lens you've used, because they're so consistent, and for your workflow, that's really important. On Nikon, I use Sigma, I use obviously Nikon lenses, I use Tokina, and each lens had different colors, which is to expect. And if you use only Nikon, you will probably experience the same consistency between lenses. But I still find that between all my Nikon's lens, I can find differences in colors and contrast depending on the quality of the lens. As here, between €1,000 lens 56mm and the €400 lens 35mm, the colors, the contrasts are pretty much the same. The difference is on the aperture and maybe a few little things, but you know, I don't work for DxO marks. I'm not interested in numbers. I'm just interested in, you know, what comes out of the camera. So, you know, I've decided to do a full switch from Nikon. I just put all my Nikon gear on sale. I have no regrets. I don't miss my Nikon gear. The only thing I would say about Nikon is that the video capability are far, far superior. And so I'm keeping a Nikon D3200 for the videos which I'm making on now. Okay, it's not going to be as good as the D800, but my point is that I don't really need to keep a D800 just to make 1 or 2 videos a week. This just doesn't make any sense. So if you are in the same dilemma as I am, you know, or as I were, between switching Nikon to Fuji, you know, I think you really need to think about this seriously, because this camera won't do maybe as much as the Nikon can do. I'm not a sport photographer, and you know, this is not a sport camera. If you're a portrait or wedding photographer, this could really be your, you know, your best new camera you can get. After, obviously, there will some people who will not like it, and it's totally understandable. But I think if you are a manual shooter, a portrait shooter, a wedding photographer, I think you should really consider giving it a try. And I think you'll be surprised of what you can get from such a small camera. And the thing is, when I got this camera, one of my worry was, it's a bit silly, but you know, you always think, what's people gonna think, you know? You turn up at weddings with a camera that is possibly gonna look smaller than some of the guest cameras, who are gonna turn up with D800, 5D Mark III, and you know, it hasn't, no one in my, you know, I don't know, hundreds of clients which I've shot with has asked me anything about it. Some of them which were actually using DSLR came to me and were very surprised of looking at the camera and telling me, oh wow, this is nice, you know, and you know, wow, what is it, you know? And only one, I think, mentioned how slim the camera was. And I just mentioned to them, well, do you remember the size of your TV 10 years ago? And you look at today's TV. You know, this is technology, you know, things get smaller. And to me, this is my answer. You know, I can do everything I could do with my Nikon with this. And better. I find the picture quality on the Fuji better than my Nikon D3S. I find the Fuji better handling the natural light than my Nikon. So, you know, I have nothing, very, very little bad things to say about this camera, if none. You know, I couldn't really use without the grip. I've tried, I've taken out without the grip, and it doesn't feel really grippy. You know, you feel kind of, you could drop it. I mean, the grip is great, and you know, there's no issue about that. But having that extra grip really takes your hand, and I'm planning to buy another x-t1, which I will also get a grip for. So let me show you a few pictures which I've taken, which are going to be weddings, portrait, family, children's, and just to show you a bit, you know, the quality of the work I've done with it. And you know, I never thought I would say this, I would go through it. I've used Nikon for 15 years. I've got this camera 3 months ago, and I've done a full switch after 3 months of use. That is not something I was expecting. You know, I was actually expecting to use this camera for personal use, use my D3S for professional use, and get a second Nikon as a backup. I am completely blown away with that camera. I've never experienced something so enjoyable so quickly. You know, every time I buy a new Nikon, it's nice, it's okay, but there is no spark, and the spark here getting this camera is really sensational. I absolutely love this camera. I take it everywhere. The image coming out of it, you know, you feel like you're shooting a bit photography, you know, because it's, I won't say it makes it easy. I'm just saying that it's actually it kind of take some kind of wall between you and the client, where it's so easy to use that you kind of get a better, the camera doesn't get in the way. That's what I mean. You know, when I shoot children with a D3S and a 70-200, it's like you put, you know, a bazooka in front of them. You take this out, it's small, it's quiet. You know, how many times I talk with the kid by shooting, by looking here, focusing on them and looking at them and shooting. They have no idea I'm taking pictures. The thing is so quiet. You don't hear anything, you know. I mean, if I take I put it next to the micro. It's so quiet. And with the electronic shutter, apparently this can be completely silent. Now, I don't know if it's a good thing. I kind of like to have at least a little noise, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is that if you are shooting people as your job, this really doesn't get in the way. It is really silent, really quiet and discreet, you know, and that's what I love about this camera, which I never really liked a small camera. I had the D7000, which I didn't like. I found it too small. I didn't really enjoy this camera, but this one is just... Anyway, I'm not going to go on forever saying the same things, but yeah, have a look at a few pictures I've taken. Tell me what you think. If you do have any questions, if you like me to do reviews about more specific things about this camera, please join our Facebook group, which is Lukas group, and you'll be able to post any question you have there. Okay. Thanks.